Okay, welcome everybody to the Area 111 live stream. This is your host RH coming at you again from the beautiful sunshine and rainy state of Florida. So before I really hop into this and talk about my experience of tracking the ash while I was working with Norad, uh, the Mount St. Helens ash after the eruption, uh, during the eruption, I guess you would say. From Mount St. Helens on 18 May of 1980. I almost forgot. I almost put Rainier in there, tracking the ash from Mount Rainier's eruption and on 18 May 1980. Hey Tracy, I'm going to have a casual conversation today, and I really kind of yeah, before somebody fact checks me, yes, that's not Mount St. Helens, the avatar photograph. That's Mount Rainier. Okay. I've been up on Mount Rainier. We went tubing up on Mount Rainier when I was stationed at, it used to be called McCord Air Force Base. It's Joint Lewis McCord now, I guess it is. When they basically unified and consolidated, the different branches of service to save money. And we kind of like made these super bases, you know what I mean? Um, so, so like with joint JSOC and all that stuff. I can't remember a lot of this terminology. It's been so long. But again, that's a photograph from, you know, um, a government source. That's Mount Rainier. So that's again. Now, if you looked at the place card holder video on Rumble, I do have Mount Mount St. Helens eruption, and you see get a little bit of the idea of the amount of ash that was basically put in our skies and the atmosphere or whatever. And I was actually on the scope tracking that ash, and it was coming right towards McCord Air Force Base, and that's why we're keeping a really close eye on it. Now, of course, right after the eruption, um, our I think we had F-104s at the base. They bugged out, right? The maintenance teams, everything, they bugged out, and they basically there was really just security for the base during that time was kind of like minimum manned, whatever. But as we were tracking because it's a joint effort. When I first arrived at uh, McCord Air Force Base, working for the 25th uh, Operational Regional Control Center, um, I was a tracking technician. Okay, we worked for NORAD for air defense. For NORAD, so we had Canadians stationed with us. It was a really great bunch of people and top notch, top notch. A lot of respect for our allies up in Canada. We had like North Bay, and I don't know how many of those facilities may have been shut down or not. But anyways, we had North Bay. We could be actually stationed at North Bay from, if my memory serves me correct. So, anyways, I do have a little bit of experience. But while I was tracking this ash, it was really, really something. We had a weather filter on our scope, so we could actually filter it out the clouds and all that kind of thing. The weather, we can actually filter it out by pushing the filter button. But if you basically didn't have the weather filter on, you can actually see the plume of ash. You know what I mean? And you could actually track it. So when we were like tracking the ash, the projection, the projection of the ash, basically dumping on cities, whatever, it was projected to basically directly hit McCord Air Force Base. And like I said, right after the eruption, may have been before, I don't remember, you know what I mean? I don't know if there was like, it started erupting, the magma started flowing, whatever, before the actual major eruption, um, that they started to bug out then. It was kind of like emergency. They bugged out to the nearest safe base, whatever. and set up there. But anyways, while we were tracking the ash, like I said, we were projecting the core going to take a direct hit. Um, the wind, the wind all of a sudden changed direction, and the bulk of that ash basically hit Yakima. Yakima, it's a city in Washington State. Yakima. So if you actually go to a map, and you type in Yakima and you want to go to, for example, Mount St. Helens on your map, um, you can actually see the angle of where from Mount St. Helens where that ash was going to, and you can see Yakima, and you can see exactly where the bulk of it. Now, after that, we wasn't allowed to basically, they call us scope dopes. It's a term of endearment. Doesn't bother me. Call me a scope dope all you want to, but my initial job there was tracking technician. Then I was promoted in position to a tracking supervisor and promoted in position as tracking officer, because we had to have crews set up, and we're human beings. Somebody has to go to the laboratory, whatever, cook up some stuff, whatever, in the laboratory, or you know take vacation or whatever. We had to have those seats filled. So we all got trained in multiple positions. Um, so to basically ensure our mission was being conducted properly. So anyways, uh, again, so like I said, welcome everybody as you're coming in. I can't really view both social media live streams over at Rumble and YouTube. So basically, I'm looking at YouTube now, focusing on YouTube. But welcome for everybody that's over on Rumble. Now, if you haven't shared this before, this site, I'm going to talk about other things as well. But I thought this is interesting. I talked a lot about word association. Word association. I don't know if you noticed this. I'm speaking for uh, Christians. So Christians are people of faith. Believe in God and everything. When you ever get around somebody else that's like-minded in the spirit, or like in spirit, I should say, you could actually feel. I remember going to my grandmother's. It was actually my great grandmother and great grandfather's home, and whenever I got there, I just had this sense of peace about me. When I was a small kid, I could detect it. Right, I felt safe. I mean, I felt the goodness. And the love and everything like that when I visited my grandparents and my great grandparents, especially. And you feel a sense that we're all in the same spiritual team when we get around and we gather together, right? You can have that. You have that feeling. And sometimes, because we're all connected to that same spirit, I don't you might not believe this. That's fine. You can believe whatever you like. um you live in America. If you don't like this channel, for example, you can always change the channel. I mean, don't touch that dial, though. That's really important here on RH, live stream. I needed to change my live stream title because Area 111. There's some other sites out there that's not me. So I just want a full disclosure. If you're looking for Area 111 channel, of course, it's Area Space 111 on YouTube, and Area 111 without the space on Rumble and True Social. So over there on Rumble, when you're looking up the channel, whatever you're doing the search, just type in Area 111, and you have to go up there and look at drop down that window for the other sites out there. I'm the one with the blue big avatar letter A with a white letter A. That's me. Okay, so don't get detoured, because a lot of people like to peel off a lot of your viewers and get you go somewhere else. Okay, This is me, myself, and I. You know what I mean? So, I'm not trying to downplay or put down any other channel. I'm just trying to say this is, you want to listen to RH live, you know, this is where I'm at. So anyways, a lot of times I do go back and delete the YT videos, live stream videos, because I've been deplatformed multiple times on that channel, and I'm being shadow banned. I believe even over on Rumble, even though I like that social media, the ability to be on Rumble and do live streams, I do believe because of the height of this live stream, we were doing thousands. We were having thousands of viewers for a single live stream, and then after I was deplatformed multiple times, that all changed. And sometimes we're lucky if we have just more than myself here. You know what I mean? So I'm not whining about it. It's just the way it is. I try to overcome and adapt, and you know what I mean. And sometimes you need different content. Now, like I said before, people, especially us in America, you have a right to your own opinions, right? And I I kind of like want to make an analogy, kind of like an analogy of what's going on right now. We can see the deep state, or however you want to term them, you know, are in full stride trying to overthrow the current president of the United States, which many of us voted for. We elected, President Trump in office. Some say 3 times. I'm in that same crowd, and well, the official story is 2 times, right? So we elected him twice. We were out there like at the very beginning, as soon as he threw his hat into the ring. I believe it was June 14th of 2015, right? He threw his hat into the ring, and you know, him and Melania Trump, when they rode that golden escalator down in Trump Towers in New York, I guess you call it. It Some of us, right when we found out about it, hey Steve, great to see you, man. Yeah, man, I haven't seen you in a long time. Man, really throttled back on me, man. So, God, like Steve can probably attest to it. And man, we used to have like thousands of viewers on this live stream. You know what I mean? So I thought I'd, you know, try to stay away from the negativity. But remember, when we expose the evil, the positive outcome is when we stop the evil, right? You know what I mean? We stop that guy with the horns and the red leotards and the pitchforks, and all that stuff. And, you know, we stop these evildoers, you know what I mean? So they don't do it again. And that includes, with what is the basically current topic is really hot on the press right now. And, how they're trying to spin the biggest natural disaster in 100 years and trying to blame President Trump on that. Trump, even though he's president of the United States, he should be able to sue people like Schumer, right, for libel slander. He should be able to sue me. Just because he's a senator doesn't mean he could go out there and libel slander the president, saying he was responsible for all those deaths and everything. You know what I mean? So that's basically where I want to look at right there. Right there, you could tell with that going on. And then, the files, not being released. Remember, I remember watching Trump rallies on, was it Right Stream Broadcasting, RSB, I think it is. And I remember President Trump, or whoever set up the rallies, played, "You can't always get what you want." How many people remember that? You can't always get what. I'm trying to calm people down in our Right Side Broadcasting Network. Thank you. That's why I love you guys, man, because you come in and you help me out. Sometimes, you can't remember everything. I I commit to memory a lot of garbage, and I got a lot of garbage still I need to eject out of my memory, right? That I don't need taking up space, you know what I mean? So, uh, anyways, you can't always get what you want, you know. Uh, since I don't have a day job to quit, I guess I could try to sing a few notes, whatever, you know. You can't always get what you want, you know. And they played that, that kind of like made me mad. You know what I mean? We worked so hard. I mean, it was first, we were all voting for Rand Paul or um, Ben Carson. Remember Ben Carson? A lot of people forget all about Ben Carson, you know. Um, and a lot of people went over to Ted Cruz, and man, we found out that he had a Canadian citizenship and then some other things, you know what I mean? And then Trump, he came right, him and Melania Trump. Okay, that was a team, right? They're coming in as a team, one spirit to make America great again, right? When did he actually start using that term? I think it was America first. So some people said he stole that from somebody else. So he came up with "Make America Great Again." I believe that's how it rolled, right? But anyways, you can't always get what you want. And hey, I understand you people that are furious out there. They thought they were going to get uh, Epstein's the files, whatever, and all that stuff. And I understand you. Let's just use this analogy. I was going to use an analogy. This is the analogy I'm about to speak of. Would you? Yeah, never forget. Hey, Tracy, glad to see you here again and again and again. I think I already welcomed you. Um, so if we have to go to war, right? We go to war, right? We're at war and we're being shot at. And you know, this is the analogy. What's going on now, in my opinion? We're kind of like at war with Delta Sierra. You know what I mean? Delta Sierra. Use those initials D and S, right? Capital D, capital S. I can't be much clearer than that. You know what I mean? So, we're at war. Sometimes, you have to retreat to higher ground or whatever, or wherever, where you have better camouflage or whatever. You got to retreat, right? But look at all the people. Look at all the people that are basically they're running away. They're running away. They like after all we've been through, are y'all serious? Come on now. We're in a battle. We're having a lot of wins, and sometimes things happen where they don't come out the way we want. The way we want. So it's like we're having a battle, and something happens in that battle, and we're losing too many. We're taking too many losses, so we have to retreat, right? But we retreat together, but we don't leave. We don't leave. We come back. We retreat to a safe area where everything's okay, right? Because I like to remind people, I'll never forget, what was it, August 8th of 2022? The Mar-a-Lago raid. They basically set up a kill box for an engagement, a weapons engagement at Mar-a-Lago. How many people have forgotten that already? Do you remember who President Trump is not a file clerk? He's not a delivery boy. He didn't deliver all those boxes into Mar-a-Lago. Who do you think delivered the majority of those boxes into Mar-a-Lago? That was the transition team already in office. The transition team already in office. Remember, they set up the TFR and everything for a weapons engagement zone. Think about that. You know, we had Monkey Works out there going through in detail, you know, about the TFR. They changed the TFR from VIP to whatever. You know what I mean? They took away his VIP status so they can go in and take in, they could actually create a kill box, if you will, or an assault operation. That's exactly what they did. People in the military, I think if you're ever trained and you're part of combat field training exercises like I was many times before. You know, we deployed to the field and we basically conducted combat field training. They were simulated combat operations in the field, right? So, you know, it's horrible, you know. So they set up the assault operation by, how do I know that's true? See, we're exposing evil as positive because we're going to expose the evil so we can stop that evil from ever happening again. That's positive. Huge. Yeah, so yeah, never forget Ben Carson. That's a great statement right there. So, let's see here. So, okay, how do we check the fact check RH about they set up an assault like engagement zone at Mar-a-Lago? So, remember, it was 2022. When did President Trump leave office? January 20th, 2021. So all the way to August, I believe it was August 8th of 2022, when they conducted that illegal raid, the criminal raid, right? They set up basically a kill zone or an engagement zone. And to prove that, we already have the information that those people involved in that operation did not wear any identification on their like jackets or anything. They were ordered to wear like polo shirts, okay, collared shirts. You know, I have to talk about this so people can remember and tie all these things together so we can stop this evil. So between the time of January 20th of 2021, remember, Donald Trump was never a delivery boy. He didn't get a box truck, right, in Washington at the White House and start basically loading up all these documents or wherever the archive center or whatever they came from. That was the old Biden clan, the same clan, the same intel, the same everything, the same three-letter agency. You know, it was a mirror. Biden's 4 years was a mirror of basically Barack Obama's in a way. Yeah, some things are different, like the auto pen and everything. So not only that were they ordered to basically conceal their identity by wearing civilian-like clothes like polo shirts or golf shirts, right? They were told to conceal their firearms. That's a big deal. And they're going to tell you, oh, that's standard operating procedure far as the authorization of lethal force. No, it's not. It's a lie. We trained in my squadron when I was in the Air Force for riot control. We did train to basically, we were taught when we should use lethal force, but we had to protect that site, right? And if we had a bunch of civilians that thought that our communication tower was actually a nuclear weapons silo. was a nuclear missile silo. They actually believed it. So to dispel any kind of myths of that, I was allowed to actually go inside that tower, that communication tower. It looked like a water tower in a way, but a miniature form of it. But you had to have line of sight, for certain communications that we had, right? So I was authorized to go inside that tower, and I actually climbed the metal steps inside that tower. And believe me, there was no nuclear weapons missile in that tower. So I wanted to actually express that if I ever had to, but we were trained in riot control. What do you think we had? We had like zip ties. We didn't have like handcuffs or anything like that in case someone breached that perimeter, right? They tried to hop the fence or whatever, get into that perimeter. So what were we trained to do? We were trained in when you can use lethal force. If you see somebody pulling out a gun, they start pointing it at you, they're about ready to pull the trigger. Yes. That's the reason for the use of lethal force, right? And I think sometimes it was, we can't fire on anyone unless fired upon, right? So we wasn't out there to say, okay, the main scope of the training was, okay, this is going to be that we're allowed to use lethal force, and the main theme of the training was lethal force. This, okay, conceal your weapons, right? Conceal your weapons. No, we were taught how to engage without injuring people and just trying to calm them down. And then what are we supposed to do? Because in the host country, we were guests. We were ambassadors of the United States while we were stationed in overseas locations. An ambassadors of the United States, which means our conduct had to be appropriate at all times. Okay. Some people went out and overdid the partying and stuff and got in trouble. That's being human, right? We're not all perfect. But anyways, yeah, we wasn't taught to basically conceal our uniforms and our identification that we were with the U.S. Air Force or, whatever military branch of service we belong to. We wasn't told to, conceal our identity. We wasn't told to wear civilian clothes, right, without our identity, and we wasn't basically told to use lethal force for let's just call President Trump a protester, right? He was cooperating with the FBI with those documents that the Biden team brought into Mar-a-Lago. So if remember, they staged the crime scene at Mar-a-Lago. Why does that apply with Epstein? Well, if you watch some of this, you can't unsee some of the stuff you watch that's coming out from the dark web, right? The sick stuff, the graphic, sexually graphic stuff they put out with President Trump and Putin and all that stuff. What do you think they were going to plant in those boxes that they got? You know what I mean? You know what I'm talking about. We have to take a time out here, right? It's like in a football game, right? There's a flag thrown and go, and sometimes they got, the team coaches, whatever, they have so many reviews, right? They ask for a review, camera review. Yeah, we want a camera review. And what did they do? They took over the cameras. You can't have a camera review. Remember all this stuff? We know why they did it, because what they were doing was inappropriate to begin with, and they knew it. They knew Trump was cooperating. And then that tied into with, the insurrection, all that stuff, the setup, J6 setup and everything. That all coincided with everything, right? The subversion letter from GA Secretary of State Raffensperger. For those that haven't read that letter, basically, go check out the refutation of Georgia's Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger of false selection claims, I believe it is. It's like 17 or 18 pages. Go read it. They subverted the objectors. That's the reason, in my opinion, for the setup. There's two ways they're going to set up to ensure the breach of the Capitol so they can evacuate the senators and the congressional representatives to basically give them that letter and falsely claim, like Russia, and everything else, Trump led the insurrection. So how many objectors changed their status from objecting, to basically just pencil whipping it? Or I bet you a lot of people wish they had their vote back again. So, they had the intel. We don't want to go through it all again, but it's like an analogy what they did. The same thing with the files. Okay, there's files and there's contact lists. Okay, remember back in the day we had those Rolodexes, whatever, and you spin through it and you're trying to find somebody's phone number, to ask them a question or whatever. And in E's case, capital E's case, or capital Echo's case, right? Hey man, you kick me out, man? Cause is it all right? That I come back again. I promise I'll be good this next time. No, right? No. And like I said, like the dirty wrap up smears and Nancy Pelosi going out there. I shared that video. I did a video clip of that and shared it to this channel multiple times. And multiple times. These are the dirty wrap up smears. Do you think that they were going to waste an opportunity to try to set up Trump again? So plan A, again, back on J6, was to ensure Trump did not get his 10,000 National Guard troops trained in riot control to work with Stephen Son, the Capitol Police Chief, to keep the Capitol secure during that process. Because we wanted to hear the evidence. That's exactly what they obstructed. They obstructed the process. Listen, they had the intel. They knew the threat. They got the threat assessment for what was projected to happen on J6. That's why they blocked it. We have to evacuate these people to give them the letter to subvert them, right? With our fraudulent, what do you call it? India Alpha Romeo. India Alpha Romeo. India Intel, right? Alpha Opinion. You could say assessment if you like. So the real threat, they knew it. They blocked Trump from the 10,000 National Guard troops. It's when they really started protecting the Capitol and DC, these, like the White House and everything. When did they really start protecting it? After they got what they wanted. After they got what they wanted, like J7, they're out there full force, right? What was plan B? If they could not allow the breach to occur in the Capitol, what was plan B? They're going to call in a bomb scare. That's why they will not identify the pipe bomber. Right? They're going to call in a bomb scare. Remember the guy that pulled the fire alarm? What do you think he did? He obstructed the process, right? Oh, well, dude, you messed up. Now, you kind of like exposed us all here by what you're doing with that little stunt. Going to mess us all up. Remember, trillions of dollars were at stake if Trump was reelected. Trillions of dollars are still at stake if President Trump stays in office. That's a lot of motive. That's a lot of motive for these evil doers out there. Yeah, Bowman. Yeah. You had him on camera, right? So how many people you believe has actually viewed all those 14,000 hours? And they say, okay, stuff like outside the Capitol, it doesn't count, right? Because so that they wouldn't show the law enforcement official in the silver with a silver badge. I think it was dark blue or black law enforcement jacket on and pants, right? Moving the temporary barriers aside and motioning people to come in. Remember that? We have all this on video. Even when they birdshot Ashley Babbitt. Remember, we have all this on video. Oh, they don't talk about it. See, they program. Those eyes, right? Those eyes. Eyes on. We got eyes on. Yeah, they do. Echelon, all that stuff. Remember, we talked about this, and it's a community together. Man. So the setup, the Mar-a-Lago. So they were using all these things as opportunities. The horrific natural disaster that hadn't occurred in like 100 years. They're already blaming Trump on. That's part of their overthrow operation. That's part of their coup operation. They're still, in my opinion, conducting illegal surveillance on Trump's family members, and all Trump associates. Go ask Peter Navarro, people like that is in Trump's cabinet now, if that's a possibility. We just think that's a slight possibility of what's going on. They still have teams. I talked about their own mission statement. I believe it was last night's live stream. It went on. I went on and on for like 3 or 4 hours. Hopefully I was coherent where y'all could understand me. I have my good days and bad days like everybody else, right? So anyways, I kind of like invited Mike Juliet. I want Mike Juliet on this live stream, or I volunteer to go up on that panel on his live stream, and he could tear me up if he wants to. I'm not. They used to call RH Velcro because every time I was insulted, I was such a competitor. I didn't like to lose anything. I was a jerk. I admit it. Number one, jerk. When you look up the definition of jerk, you saw RH in the definition. He was a jerk. That came with competition, the competition spirit of being a athlete in some ways, and some ways kind of like a mediocre athlete, and sometimes a good athlete, depending on what sport I was involved in. But anyways, yeah, everything stuck to. So if you got something that's what do you call it? Constructive criticism, please throw it at me. Put it in the chat. I heard somebody. I'm kind of lightening up a little bit. You know what I mean? Somebody came in there. Hey, bro, you got to learn how to talk. You're right. Sometimes I got to learn how to talk again. You know what I mean? Especially you got to control your emotions and be able to communicate where you can be understood. Believe me, I can go out there and create a military briefing, get all the outline together and get my cards to read from because I don't have a teleprompter to keep me on track, whatever. I can go off script whenever I want to. I don't think I can go off script as much as President Trump can, but you know, I can go off script. I'm going kind of like off script right now. What's the title of the live stream, right? Uh Tracking Mount St. Helens ash with Norad. So yeah, so they had plan A was to block President Trump from getting the National Guard out there trained in riot control at the Capitol to ensure there was no breach and they would not evacuate out the separate Senate and separate House chambers. We have to go back and look at the joint session all the way again. You gotta watch the entire thing. Most people in America, even people that um, um, conducted their civic duty to fill out those pieces of paper, most people never even listened to the objectors, like Dr. Paul Gosar of the state of Arizona on his own. Be be honest. Be honest. Don't cheat yourself. Be honest. How many people actually listened to all the objection for the, I believe it was first state, Arizona, of certifying? Okay, so we're going to get back and we're going to go back to setting up Trump and what they're going to do, because it's like, what do they say? Let no crisis go to waste, right? Something to that effect. Remember that? Let no crisis go to waste. These programmers, right? Programming these shows, right? They move to the next cycle. Wait a minute. You still got a mess on hour 1 to 100, right? You got still messes you haven't cleaned up with all this psyops operation and propaganda that you put out there that you never cleaned up. And you notice when they do try to clean up a few things to make it look like they're fair and balanced, it's kind of trivial. And people already moved on. They don't care about it. What's that got to do with now, RH? You know what I mean? What's that got to do with it? I was asked that multiple times. That's a good question. We're talking about the modus of operandi, their modus of operandi, right? – 2%. Uh, but anyways, well, yeah, so they set up Trump and all these different things. The Russia. Why? Why did they set up Trump? They falsely accused him and accused us of doing things they have done to take over the investigations, the multiple investigations, to destroy the evidence on themselves. You go, wow, what? Where does the files go? We talked about the burn barrel party. Houston, we got a problem at that consulate. Remember? That's the reason why they falsely accused Trump of being a Russian agent, which is treason, by the way. That's what Brendan was calling for Trump to be basically arrested before he could even get in the White House after he's elected in 2016. That's why they called him. They said he was treason. What that goes back to an insurrectionist. What is that? The 14th Amendment? that you could no longer hold office if you committed like a treason or high crimes, or no, if you committed an insurrection, right? They committed the insurrection. Seriously, what do you think the pipe bomber was going to be used for? They'll make it like turn it into a legitimate threat assessment. Well, we just can't risk it. We're going to have to evacuate the separate Senate and House chambers. We got to get y'all out of here. We got to let y'all read that Brad Raffensperger subversion letter that the deep state helped them put together. We already got the evidence. So, to cover up the information, right? They had to falsely accuse Trump of what they're doing. Remember Uranium One? Remember July 7th of 2009 when Barack Obama traveled to Novogorodiova and met with the prime minister of Russia because of his intel connections over there in Russia? Remember? Vladimir Putin. I believe that was a KGB resident of Vladimir Putin or intel resident. That's in Novogorodiova. At the time, Medvedev was the president. He was in Moscow. Proper standard protocol for the president is to meet with his counterpart, they call it, right? The president. So that's the reason why President Obama brought his intel chief, General James Jones, right, along with him. They were setting up, in my opinion, uranium U1, Uniform 1. So everybody's innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. All these people should have their day in court, right? Where do you think that certain uniform went to? Well, a lot of people believe, like myself, that it went to number one state sponsor of terrorism. Can you imagine that? They go, man, we can't have President Trump getting that intel. So what do? They put up this half, Alpha Sierra dossier that they got a actual Russian help put together. Blame Trump for colluding with Russia to, do what? Take over the investigation and destroy all the evidence on themselves. So remember intel operation, right? It was an intel operation. Come on, this is like true logic. It's not faulty logic. But could I still be wrong on some of these topics or whatever, or some of these points? Yeah, I could be wrong on some of them, but all of them? Who warned that before Trump shut down that consulate in Houston? Who warned them beforehand that consul was going to? Remember, we had a certain 4-star out there that said he was going to warn. He was going to basically tip off China if Trump was considering, even thinking about hitting targets or threats, whatever, regarding China. So they kept Trump in a box, right? They kept him in a box. They put him in a kill box at least, let's say, I'm going to say 2 times. At least twice. Butler is a perfect definition of putting somebody in the kill box. Even our first lady said, why did they let him get up on the stage? That threat was out there, right? Why did they let him get up on the stage? How long was those people out there screaming? He's on the roof, on the roof, on the roof. Crooks. There's a crook on the roof. How many times did they shout that before? And President Trump was still out there talking about it. Remember, there's a man that lost his life there, Corey. Remember Corey losing his life? Man. So I know a lot of this is a review. Thank you for sticking around and get through the review part where, we discussed this like a million times or whatever. I understand it gets kind of dry after a while, but these people have not been held accountable. They did with the documents. Remember the Clinton documents, that emails that President Trump, those wedding and yoga emails, remember President Trump authorized the total declassification of the Russia deal and, the Hillary Clinton email scandal with no redactions? You think they were going to let that out? And you had Pompeo out there saying, well, basically, he had national defense information. The guy was a CIA director. He was the Secretary of State, right? After that, who was in there purging all that dirt? Who set up the crime scenes? Well, if you set up a fraudulent presidential finding so you can conduct surveillance on your opponents, your political opponents, and economic opponents, that's a major, major point. That's a major, major point. That's a major motive. Do you think that China wanted to allow President Trump, or any country by the map, as far as that is concerned? Do you think Donald Trump, they wanted Trump to get in office so he can impose tariffs to basically reduce that trade deficit of about $500 billion every year with China? Do you think they really wanted that? We're talking about trillions of dollars. Do we seriously believe that the EU, which was created to compete economically with the United States of America, you look at the EU's GDP, it almost mirrors ours today. Do you seriously believe they wanted President Trump in office again? Or the first time? They listened to all his campaign speeches, just like most of them. We listened to his campaign speeches at the rallies and everything else. We know what he's all about. He is very transparent what he's going to do, especially giving the power back to the people. Government power of the government of the people, by the people, and for the people, right? So we know all this stuff. This is all hindsight, like perfect vision. That's why I think I love that what happened in 2020, right? Hindsight, perfect vision. It's kind of amazing how we had to go around about certain things because so we wouldn't be deplatformed, censored again and again and again and again and again. But anyways, we were talking about word association last night. And as far as word association is coming up is Rainier. Okay. So that avatar photograph, Rainmaker, Rainier. I went tubing there, right? And it wasn't a very good experience as far as coming down off that mountain and hopping in a car with somebody. It was a huge car, and thank God. A lot of people say, you cheat death sometimes, you cheat death. No. God, in my opinion, God stops that guy with those red leotards, that pitchfork, and those horns from stealing our life, right? Sometimes there's divine intervention, like at Butler. right? Like at Butler. Okay, so yeah, there's already these contact lists, from the files, whatever, that I think one of the eyes put those out. They have those too. So if they want to put out their own little their edits, whatever, updates, whatever on that material, they can. They can. Remember, I don't like to use New Zealand in part of some of this, or even Australia in some of this, because there's a lot of good people. You know, we're not angry or mad at, for example, the normal, like working class and normal civilians in Iran. They're not our enemy. They're not our enemy. You know, that's the reason why it was the number one state sponsor. It wasn't all the people in Iran. Remember, we go back to before 1979, before the Iranian Revolution, right? We were friends with them. We were actually providing them F-14 Tomcats. We were providing them uh, military equipment and combat planes and everything, because they were our ally. And then something happened and they wanted to change that regime. I guess it was because the Shah was trying to nationalize the oil, right? That's what we say, but we don't have the whole picture here. You know what I mean? We only got bits and pieces. We only got a few pieces of that puzzle. And anyways, so word association, Rainier keeps popping up. Rain. Okay, let me go back. Let me check out. I got to check out something real quick. Stand by. I had to make sure before I made another mistake. Rainier, I don't know how long. How long has my mic been muted? They can take over your phone. They can mute your mic, and you don't look at it, and then your live stream goes down. But Mount Rainier, right? That word rain is popping up, even though that's kind of like a Rainier. It's it's not a compound word, I guess. Well, you can get rain out of it, right? The first four letters, rain. Okay, so rainmaker has come to my attention. Recently when we're talking about seed, that one. We didn't get into direct energy and getting to how you can get into really. modification, I mean, really expansive or dangerous modification. We didn't I'm not getting into all that, you know what I mean? So they use these algorithms too, right? And they basically take our communication. There's like these supercomputers out there, right? So you hear RH talking about Rainier, rain, right? Rain. Okay. 27, 27 feet, right? Of a rain wall or wall. You know what I mean? You know, going down river and causing the flash flooding. You know, I did some um basically easy hiking trails, like they're level one trails. You know, you don't, if you're kind of like elderly, if you got some type of previous injury or whatever, you can do a level one. But some of those areas, they're kind of like a little bit, they call them level one, but if you go down certain parts of the trail, I would consider them be level two, you know, depending on your condition or your physical, you know, if you have any physical problems, whatever. But anyways, we're not as limber as we used to be. Those that are us that are, they will, we are considered old by the majority of people in the world. You know, now we're old, ancient. So, anyways, I'm looking at Mount Rainier National Park. You know that it was around the same time that Mount St. Helens blew up, because I was only stationed at McCord Air Force Base. Let's see, from uh, 79 to 81. And I volunteered for an overseas assignment, and they picked me up. And I extended. Uh, I got out after 5 years and 7 months for almost 2 years, or right exactly at 2 years, and joined back up with the Air Force in 1986 and finished off with over 20 years active duty. But anyways, so for some of these people that don't know who I am, you know what I mean? Um, so I'm going to put you guys up on stage now. Okay. I think you should be able to see the comments up on stage now. I'm trying that out on YouTube. Let's see what happens. Got to have a comment, right? So let me be the first one to type in a comment, see if it works. Testing. How many in the play consider the truth at all? In the movie, you mean? I'm trying to figure out where you're coming from, Tracy. Could you elaborate on that? There's probably a lot of people, they don't care about the truth, right? They don't care. I'm kind of disappointed in Truth Social, because I thought we'd be able to actually live stream on Truth Social. I don't know if you can or not, if there's a way you can do it, but I'm not aware of it. But anyway, so the topic, I'm kind of like diverting from Mount St. Helens. I'm just talking about that. Mount St. Helens. Okay, so what is the association I could have used if I was wise enough back then, when I was only like 18 years old or 19 years old or whatever? You know what I mean? Let's see, I was still 19. Oh yeah, the truth, yeah, isn't profitable, right? Not at all. Man, there's a lot of people. There's big money in being anti-Israeli. Let's just say anti-Israeli, right? A lot of money involved in that. I see a lot of people, you know, I never really questioned before, but their vehement hatred for one country. And it's is it's kind of troubling. You know what I mean? You know, it's like everything that happened, whether it's 9/11, whether it's, you know, I don't know, the Liberty. You know, I got some other information with the Liberty that people never really considered. We talked about a a kill zone, right? A kill zone. How many people know that the Liberty was actually an intel ship? They're conducting intel, right? How many people know that was a restricted zone, like a what do you call it, kill zone? That they basically, I think they were calm silent. This is what I think. And now I don't. The people that were behind that, right, and caused those deaths and all those injuries, that was horrible, horrible. Just like the Beirut 1983 Beirut's barracks bombing, right? I just heard somebody in this community. I still respect the guy. He, you know, he has a right to his opinions, but he said the attack on the Beirut barracks bombing in 1983, U.S. Marine barracks, was justified. No, I can't go along with that. I mean, I refuse to believe it. I've had people say that President Reagan was really a really evil man. I mean, I can't go along with that. You know, he made mistakes. He's a human being at all, also. But do we seriously believe that President Reagan ordered a battleship to fire on women and children? Do we seriously believe that at all? Yeah, that the Liberty was actually an intel ship, and it looked just like the silhouette of the Liberty looked just like an Egyptian cargo ship. It looked like it. I mean, I'm not gonna lie to y'all. If that wasn't true, I viewed the silhouettes. You know, you have to basically, especially the Navy, right? You have to basically understand the silhouettes. And when they started saying stuff like this, that you know, the guys on deck saw those Israeli fighter jets basically in the canopy and saw them flipping them, giving them the California greeting, right, from the ship deck. You know, I start to question that. Those were, I think those were Sabre aircraft. I can't remember. I went through a deep dive, not to basically support those that were behind attacking the Liberty. No, I wanted anyone that's like that, anyone that's involved with murder. I don't care what nationality or what country you are from. You should be held accountable for murder, right? You should be accountable for murder. Now, the Liberty was on calm silent, right? When they basically, it's a ship. It wasn't a sailboat, but when it proceeded to get in that kill box. Once they arrived in that kill box, it doesn't matter who's in that kill box. And like I say, I'm not justifying for all those people that are still alive that lost loved ones on the Liberty. I'm not justifying it at all. Not at all. There's fratricide in war, right? Fratricide, where we actually take casualties from individuals that are on the same team as we are. It's horrible. It's horrible. There was a guy I know. He was in Desert Storm. One guy used to be my brother-in-law. I was a friend of his. Basically, he was in. I forgot what he was at the station at Garlstead, right? And he deployed for Desert Storm. I forgot Bradley, the Bradley vehicles, right? He was on the Bradley, and he got too rambunctious, right? And he basically floored his Bradley towards the enemy, actually in Iraq in those positions, and he got out of position in our own military tanks, right, that was deployed there in Desert Storm. They actually shot that Bradley and killed him. I don't know how many people died on the Bradley. I can ask my brother-in-law. But he went to a party. I met the guy. He was, what do you call it? What do you call it? Heavy hitter, fast mover. What do they call that? There's a term for that. High speed operative, right? That's the way he always was in his life. And, it's a shame he lost his life. He got out of position. And I'm not saying that's what happened to the Liberty. I don't know all the aspects of it. I do know that the Israelis that were responsible for striking that ship, they should be held accountable. Okay. And, that's just the way it is. I hate to say it, but going back to the strike from that battleship where we were shelling these positions in Lebanon. Now, somebody correct me if I'm wrong. Before 1983, before the war, that was ran by, a Christian. The leadership was Christian or partial Christian, right? As far as my understanding, they used to identify Lebanon as a Christian country. Please, somebody fact check that for me. You know what I mean? But, that doesn't mean that, okay, the shelling, that I condone the shelling because they wasn't Christian. The people that they hit, especially innocent women and children, we're against that totally. We're against totally what, ECHO was involved in. We're against that totally. I had somebody actually on my friends list on social media. Basically, she's putting out that John Voight's daughter was human trafficking. And I basically said, I just asked the lady, right? Hey, do you have a video clip? She said that she actually said that herself, that she was actually child trafficking, or in that sense, human trafficking, right? She actually said that. She admitted herself that she did it. And all I asked that person that was used to be a friend, I thought was a friend, okay, well, do you have the clip where she actually said that she, and I said, it could have been sarcastic or because of the false allegations. Maybe they were false. Those were false allegations. Remember, we're presumed to be innocent until proven guilty, not the other way around, not the way they always handled President Trump in their lawfare, right? Oh, he's guilty, right? We're going to sue him for $500 million for a ledger, right? A ledger input, nearly $500 million. So they tried to bankrupt Trump, right? They tried to bankrupt him, destroy all his businesses, attack his children, you name it. So that's their MO. Yeah. Hey, thank y'all for the contributing to this channel and being active in the chat. But anyways, yeah, it's like it's amazing how they spin this stuff around, that we're guilty of their wrongdoing, right? So they take over the investigation or personally attack you. I was like, he asked me if I was single. It's that person I was talking about. That I said, well, just show me the video. Give me your source so I can look at it. Because I really like John Voight, That's his daughter. So just like, let's see, if for these accusations, as far as President Reagan is concerned, if you're a son or daughter of President Reagan, you could actually sue that individual. Or, what I'm saying that we got free speech, right? But if you make a big mistake like that, I mean, a huge mistake like that, or maybe you didn't basically add some more information where you can make it look like you believe that. But come on now, how many people believe that Ronald Reagan would authorize a battleship strike on innocent women and children? How many people do y'all believe out there that because of that, the Ayatollahs, whatever, the Ayatollah at that time was, what do you call that, justified in attacking the Beirut barracks that killed over 200 of our Marines there? I want people to recall, this is how, this divides up our community. This is how this divides up Make America Great Again. This is how it divides up America First again, right? America First movements. Make America Great Again. This is how it's divide and conquer. It's the same old tactics. This is part of the ongoing coup to actually overthrow the President of the United States. Remember? So, yeah, if you're a son or daughter of President Reagan, you can actually sue individuals like that. So I think it's appropriate for individuals, especially that have a professional background in whatever it is, go out there and clarify it. That's all you got to do. I ask for clarification all the time. I just ask for constructive criticism. Well, RH, you need to learn how to speak. You need to learn how to talk, brother. Bro, yeah, you're right. Sometimes I need to learn how to talk. Sometimes I need to calm down. Calm down. Don't get so excited. Don't get so angry, I get really angry when I talk about these murderers that's still walking as free men and women on our streets or safe in their sanctuaries, wherever they're at. They're not going to be out there as visible as we are, but they're out there, believe me. For 4 years, the other team, they're not on the same team. They're not on the same team as we are. They're out there. Some very, very dangerous people are out there. Use your imagination. For 4 years, that side of the owl and the Delta Sierra, capital D, capital S, Delta Sierra, they facilitated and directed an invasion into our country. Use your imagination who they brought in. They use these people around the world in other operations, covert operations, overthrow other world leaders. Like I can use, for example, Hosni Mubarak as an example. Remember how they attacked him? What did Hosni Mubarak have in common with Yanukovych in Ukraine? Well, Hosni Mubarak had a peace treaty. Egypt had a peace treaty with Israel over 30 years. What did Yanukovych have in common with Hosni Mubarak of Egypt, the president of Egypt? He had a peace treaty with Russia, right? You can go back and you look at the Kharkiv Pact and all that stuff and understand the history of Crimea. Goes back over 240 years. Go check it out. So, if we don't learn from, I just heard Brigida Gabriel, I believe was her name. If you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it, right? Thank you, Tracy. Yeah, I hope so. Even though, like, it says right now I have 2 viewers on YouTube. We've been going an hour and 20 minutes now. Let's see here. I appreciate the support. In a way, I wish I'd have been I took, you know, donations to build a, like a studio, kind of like more professional type. I got a computer room, like an office room. All I got to do is clean out the old junk. When you're in the military for a long time and you move everywhere, you take all this junk with you, right? It's like those hitchhikers. You get on your shoes when you walk out there in the grass. You know what I mean? We call them, some people. I think it was from my neighbor. I heard her call them hitchhikers. It's like those little, I don't know what you call them, weeds, whatever, that like little round things that stick to your shoes like Velcro, and you got to take them off, pick them off, whatever. Anyways, yeah. Sometimes I get myself down a side street and I can't get back to the main street again. You know what I mean? Have y'all ever? Well, I've done that actually driving. Baby spurs. Yeah. Baby spurs. Yeah, I needed to do this all. I'm glad I just found that. Show comments on stage. I'm glad I have that ability now to do that. So if I share your comments up on stage, it basically masks out the other comments, right? So I gotta learn a little bit. Yeah, but back in the day, I remember, Steve, you're still here. Yeah, you can remember. You guys were trying to get me a new phone because I was doing my live streams off of smart. I always called it the smart/dumb phone. Remember, I had a terrible mic, and some people trying to get me a new mic and said, "Listen, when I get paid again," it was around Thanksgiving, right? I said, "When I get paid again, I got enough money. I'll have enough money to buy one." And that's exactly what happened. It didn't work out that I got it. Somebody basically spelled my name wrong at Walmart. So when I went there to get the money, and I showed them my driver license, they couldn't give me the money. So I said, "Hey, you're going to get that money back, refunded it to you. Just give it to somebody that needs it more than I do, right? Just give it to somebody that, you know, needs it more than me, because I really didn't need it, at the time." And then somebody explained to me, "Hey, that's a blessing, RH. You shouldn't basically turn away your blessings." And I got a different mentality now. At least it got me to think about that, right? Um, Kind of like a come to Yeshua moment, right? Come to Yeshua moment. Uh, so all these, now we talked about word association. Now there was I think one of the biggest earthquakes that, far as on the Richter scale or whatever they call it, that ever happened on the planet was in China, I believe. It was even stronger than the Haiti earthquake. Remember? And I was seeing all these things that were lining up with like word association and the number 111, right? And I was looking at Easter Island, right? And then I was seeing images of the Statue of Liberty and the Planet of the Apes and other things. And I was seeing the Statue of Liberty lying on its side. And I'm not calling myself a prophet, okay, by any means. I'm just looking at what some people call transcendentalism, or uh, there's another term for that, but not like ESP, extrasensorial perception. I got into learning about the pineal gland and how that's kind of like a communication between us and God. And and you start seeing all these words that start matching up, right? Like 111 and Easter. I kept on looking at waking up at the like a 1:11 a.m. I kept looking at the clock, right? When I woke up, and it'll say 111. And when I was living in South Carolina, I had a log home before I lost it, whatever. That's a whole nother story. But anyways, uh, I get up at the middle of the night or whatever, and I wouldn't like if we ever had a power outage, I wouldn't go out and change all the clocks. I had like a microwave clock, over the range microwave, a stove clock, whatever. I had all these clocks in my home. I had an alarm clock next to my, where I slept at. So I had all these clocks. And it was crazy. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, look at my alarm clock next to my bed on the nightstand, and say 111. And then 4 or 5 hours later or whatever, I wake up and I go into the kitchen and my microwave would be 111. And, and it it wasn't 111. So I started seeing all these signs. I see addresses 111. Why am I being showed this? You know what I mean? So I started going, well, maybe this is a sign I need to pay attention to, right? So I got down, and what I didn't want to do is become like a false prophet, right? I did not want to become like a false prophet, go out there presumptuously, basically say that God told me to say something when God didn't tell me to say something, right? This is just kind of like my intuition. So anyways, I'm going to read the warning real quick again a little bit later, but I was seeing all these signs with Chile at the moment. At the moment, I was seeing all these signs, America laying down on its side, and what I mean, and thinking about earthquakes and everything like that. God shaking things up a little bit, and I was focused on Easter Island and the statues. You know what I mean? And I don't know those were being worshipped or not back in the history, whatever, of Easter Island. At the time, I didn't even know Easter Island was basically owned or a territory of Chile. So after the major earthquake, and I was actually texting or emailing people like Rush Limbaugh, for example. Trying to scare people, whatever. You know what I mean? You're just trying. No, I'm not. And it all basically was Easter Island, and I kind of like looked at the what do you call that, Google Earth, and I looked at Easter Island, and I looked at Chile, and saying basically, I thought that the earthquake was going to be between Easter Island and the Statue of Liberty on its side. I later figured out that was a sign, I think, for me. I believe for me, right? I believe for me that people will be lying down. What do you do when you sleep? The Statue of Liberty lying down, right? For some reason, I was showed that. And there's other things involved as well, right? Where things start to line up perfectly, right? And after the earthquake occurred, or right before it, I actually was reading on Easter Island that if I'd have gone down like one or two more paragraphs, it said at the time, I think it was 1888 or something like that, there was 111. The population was 111. And if I saw that, I would have known. And then I saw, okay, Easter Island belongs to Chile, right? then everything would have lined up for me perfectly to put out the warning that they're about ready to have an earthquake. Okay? An earthquake to wake people up in their sleep, right? To wake people up in their sleep and to put the warning out to help try to save lives, not take lives. Yeah, pattern recognition. Yes, sir. And everything fell into place perfectly. So, so when I've started seeing these signs, what I didn't want to become is like a false prophet, because I'm going to explain to you why. Explain to everyone why. What's the warning in the Word of God? Okay, this is Deuteronomy chapter 18, verse 15. This is a seriously huge warning. Okay, this is not to judge anybody. Everybody could go to the source and read it for themselves. When should all the arguments stop? It should stop after this, right? For those that want to argue, and try to make you look like you're evil or something. The Lord thy God will raise up unto thee a prophet from the midst of thee, of thy brethren. So that's God talking to Moses, right? Like unto me, unto him ye shall hearken, according to all that thou desirest of the Lord thy God in Horeb, in the day of the assembly, saying, let me not hear again the voice of the Lord my God, neither let me see this great fire any more, that I die not. And the Lord said unto me, they have well spoken that which they have spoken. I will raise them up a prophet from among their brethren, like unto thee, and I will put my words in his mouth. Like unto who? Like unto Moses, right? And he shall speak unto them all that I shall command him. See, this was an unfulfilled prophecy when these scriptures were written, right? They were translated from the original Hebrew manuscripts. Yeah, that's a very important point. I won't talk about that tonight. And it shall come to pass that whosoever will not hearken unto my words, which he shall speak in my name, I will require it of him. But the prophet which shall presume to speak a word in my name, which I have not commanded him to speak, or that shall speak in the name of other gods, even that prophet shall die. And if thou say in thine heart, how shall we know the word which the Lord hath not spoken? When the prophet speaketh in the name of the Lord, if the thing follow not, nor come to pass, that is the thing which the Lord hath not spoken, but the prophet have spoken it presumptuously. Thou shalt not be afraid of him. Okay? So now what I figured out with that was, I considered that a warning to myself, not to go down that road, right? For me to presumptuously speak. Listen, hey, God told me this. God showed me this. God didn't show me that. God didn't tell me that. But sometimes I've been drawn, like the number 111, like 1:11 a.m. All those times, I'm drawn, like my spirit is drawn to look at a certain area or a sign. I call them signs, and try to put them together to help try to save lives. Right? So I go, well, if I try to look up these signs in the Word of God, and I can match them up with the Word of God, right? Then, then if I'm basically sharing scriptures in the Word of God, then I can't get in trouble. You know what I mean? When it comes to Judgment Day, right? Because I'm not speaking presumptuously. So the number 111, what I did was I took my Bible And I turned to the page 111, and I was looking at things that were kind of dear to my heart, trying to figure out what are these signs that I'm seeing, what, trying to make sense of it. You know, and remember King Solomon. Remember what he asked for. King Solomon didn't ask for money or anything else or power. He asked for wisdom, right? He asked God for wisdom. Remember that? And then God basically gave him everything. He asked for wisdom. Remember the son of King David, right? He asked for wisdom. So I turned to my scriptures in page 111, and I'm going to read you exactly what it says. You know, when there's some movies out there where talking about, basically it's based on a heart donor and the donor picking up like mechanical memory from people like in the past, like being able to play. I don't know if that's true or not. I'm just saying. So let's go to page 111 in my King James Authorized Version Bible, page 111. And this is chapter 36. So even though there's a lot of books, depending on the print, your page number will not be the same as mine. So this is Exodus chapter 36. Then wrought Bezaleel and Aholiab and every wise-hearted man in whom the Lord put wisdom. Okay, Lord, all caps. All those letters are capitalized. That's a big deal, right? Put wisdom and understanding to know how to work all manner of work for the service of the sanctuary according to all that the Lord had commanded. And Moses called Bezaleel and Aholiab and every wise-hearted man in whose heart the Lord had put wisdom, even every one whose heart stirred him up to come onto the work to do it. So, okay, my heart stirred up because of these signs, right? I want to make sure I put the warning out there that helps save lives, not take lives, not allow that evil to steal any more lives, right? So that's just a couple of, some people might call all these coincidences, and yeah, you have a right to your opinion. But this isn't dark magic, right? We're not talking about evil seances or something like that, or, darn sure isn't talking about certain things that what do you call that? Certain things that we found out, right? That some individuals were doing. But anyways, I try to share this information for those that have they have a troubled heart, and they're seeing all these things, they're seeing all these signs. And I think I actually heard it on when did I heard other people seeing the same similar like signs, right? With like 222, they some people call those angelical signs, right? Like for good, not for evil. Okay, for example, the number 222. When we talk about I term, so I started turning my Bible to look at either chapters and verses regarding the number 111, and sometimes I would use 1111 because on the basically coast to coast radio, I was up early in the morning hours and I heard that that radio show coast to coast where they had people come on the show and they were seeing similar signs. A lot of them were seeing 1111, right? 1111. Um, and I'm going to share something about 1111 that I was drawn to, right? Um, let's see here. 1111. I got to find a certain little book. Let's see here. I gotta find the book. Not the Bible, by the way. Something where I kind of like jotted down a bunch of things I saw. But on the cover of this book, and this is kind of funny because I wrote this in 2009 and I was pressured to get this out there. The the book, the title of the book is 111. Now some people say that's 111, right? Yeah, 1111 is a major thing. Now I'm going to read to you, Steve, something you might think it's really, really interesting. Really interesting. Now, when I was researching our preambles and noticing the common denominator of our preambles, Lord our God, you know, God, mean, I came across this real quick. Okay, let me read this. This is the Mayflower Compact, the Mayflower Compact, right? So it begins, in the name of God, amen. We whose names are underwritten, the loyal subjects of our dread sovereign Lord King James, by the grace of God of Great Britain, France, Ireland, King, defender of the faith, etc., having undertaken for the glory of God and advancement of the Christian faith and honor of our king and country, a voyage to plant the first colony in the northern parts of Virginia, do by these present solemnly and mutually in the presence of God and one of another, covenant and combine ourselves together into a civil body politic for our better ordering and preservation and furtherance of the ends aforesaid, and by virtue hereof to enact, constitute, and frame such just and equal laws, ordinances, acts, constitutions, and offices from time to time as shall be thought most meet and convenient for the general good of the colony, unto which we promise all due submission and obedience. In witness whereof we have hereunder subscribed our names at Cape Cod the 11th of November in the year of the reign of our sovereign Lord King James of England, France, and Ireland, the 18th, and of Scotland, the 54th, Anno Domini 1620. So there you have your 1111. What else is a basically sign far as 1111? Okay, it's a holiday, right? It's a holiday. Y'all know what holiday it is? Veterans Day. Remember that? Remember all these people, all these great founders and everybody that died to establish the Constitution, everything. Even the first colony was established as Christian colonies. The very first. You think the guy with the red leotards and the pitchfork and you know, the horns? You think that guy wants us to learn this? That's why they had to take all this out of our history, right? They took it all out of the history because it's like you see in these old horror movies, a witch actually melting, whatever, or what do you call those zombies or whatever? Whenever daylight hits them, I know that's yeah. And then, far as the 111, I mean, all the verses, um, let's see here. I'm just going to provide a few of them. Okay. There was one that was really kind of like important, at least to me. I'm going to find that one. I'm not going to go through all of them, but it's really crazy how they all match up. You know what I mean? So, okay, this is Isaiah chapter 11, verse 1. Okay, that you can say it's 111, right? Is a verse from the Bible that states, "A shoot will come up from the stump of Jesse." Okay, from his roots, a branch will bear fruit, in reference to future Messiah and the qualities of the Spirit of the Lord will bestow upon him. Okay, that's co-pilot's answer. That's not the KJV. So we go to the Bible Hub and you go basically click on or type in Isaiah chapter 11 verse 1 and click type in Bible Hub. You can get all the parallel um, versions of even the Aramaic version. Okay, so let's go down to the King James Bible version of Isaiah chapter 11 verse 1. "And there shall come forth a rod out of the stem of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots." Okay, so rod, right? Okay, so rod. What are they talking about far as rod? "And there shall come forth a rod out of the stem of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots." Okay, okay, this is not going to be a 111 or chapter 11 verse 1 or chapter 1 verse 11 scripture, but um, I'm basically going to like cross reference a rod. Okay, bear with me. Okay, we're going to the Bible Hub again. We're going to Genesis chapter 49 verse 10. King James Version. "The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh come, and unto him shall the gathering of the people be." Okay, that's King James Version, Authorized Version, Genesis chapter 49, verse 10. Okay? So, what are we talking about, right? Talking about a lawgiver, the rod, right? The scepter. Now, let me see. I don't think the scepter was ever translated as a rod. Far as the, I could go back to the concordance, but I'm not. That's not really the important. But what is important? Remember, we're talking about those out there claiming that individuals were prophets in the past or whatever, or when they were basically presumptuously speaking that they were giving us messages from God himself, right? Presumptuously speaking. And who's going to judge that? Well, God warned us what to look out for, right? Again, so it's very, very important because there's a lot of false witnessing going on out there. A lot of false witnessing. I mean, a lot. Let's see here. Let's go back to Exodus, right? What God warned us about. So this is just a word of this is just a maybe a word of advice from RH. If you're seeing these signs, so you keep yourself out of trouble. Try to source them in the Word of God, and you won't go wrong, in my opinion. Right? These are just my opinions. Okay. Deuteronomy. I got so many bookmarkers. Sometimes I open up to a certain portion of the Bible and the bookmarks, slide out and I don't put them back in. Okay, again, Deuteronomy chapter 18, verse 15. This became a fulfilled prophecy. The Lord thy God will raise up unto thee a prophet from the midst of thee, of thy brethren, like unto me, unto him ye shall hearken. Okay? According to all that thou desirest of the Lord thy God in Horeb in the day of the assembly, saying, let me not hear again the voices of the Lord my God, neither let me see this great fire any more, that I die not. And the Lord said unto me, they have well spoken that which they have spoken. I will raise them up a prophet from among their brethren, like unto thee, and will put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak unto them all that I shall command him. And it shall come to pass that whosoever will not hearken unto my words which he shall speak in my name, I will require it of him. But the prophet which shall presume to speak a word in my name, which I have not commanded him to speak, or that shall speak in the name of other gods, even that prophet shall die. And if thou say in thine heart, how shall we know the word which the Lord hath not spoken? When a prophet speaketh in the name of the Lord, if the thing follow not, nor come to pass, that is the thing which the Lord hath not spoken, but the prophet had spoken it presumptuously, thou shalt not be afraid of him or her, right? Okay, so now a lot of Christians have been basically referencing Ephesians. Now, on the back cover of this communique, I call it, I have Ephesians chapter 6, verse 11 through 17. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 11 through 17. Okay? So, what does it say? Put on the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in the high places. Wherefore take unto you the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all to stand. Stand therefore, having your loins girt about with truth, and having on the breastplate of righteousness, and your feet shod with the preparation of the gospel of peace. Above all, taking the shield of faith, wherewith ye shall be able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked, and take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God. That's Ephesians chapter 6, verse 11 through 17. Okay? And I'm pretty sure people that are Christians, unless I'm not, like I said, I'm not judging. In my opinion, well, it's not my opinion in far as the word of God goes, if you're using the word of God for your references, um, the serpent seed is fighting the seed of the woman, right? And what were we told about this from the very beginning in Genesis? At the very, very beginning, right? And the Lord God said unto the woman, this is Genesis chapter 3, verse 13. What is that thou hast done? And the woman said, the serpent beguiled me, and I did eat, right? And the Lord God said unto the serpent, okay, did eat from what? The knowledge of good and evil, right? She took from the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Well, do you think God would have forbidden her and Adam from taking from a tree if it was a tree of good, only good? What we're focusing on here is the practical knowledge of evil, actually doing evil. That's what God tries to steer us away from, to keep us safe, right? To steer us away from practical, actually committing evil. It's crazy. I guess, sometimes, yeah, I won't talk about this. Yeah. Yeah, I was falsely accused of being a numerologist, just by saying, you know, I'm not trying to basically take these numbers and force it into some type of prophecy. I'm basically using it for signs out of the Word of God, signs from the Word of God to basically, for me personally, right? This is for me personally, to try to make sure I'm doing the right thing. So, yeah, seed. Of course, we know what the seed is. I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed, Satan's seed, the serpent, right? You know, we use certain terms to basically identify human beings, like a rat. He's a rat, you know, or a snake, or he's like a oak. You know, we use these terms. Well, you're growing like a reed, a weed, RH. I remember my grandparents referred to me as a weed. I grew like a weed, right? I like a cedar, you know, a cedar. So remember all these are kind of like ways to identify people that are, you know, bad. What's the way how you call bad? Okay, well, evil, of course. Now they say what's bad is good and what's good is bad, right? That's bad. A-double-S. Remember, that's bad. That's sick. You know, sick is bad to me. You want to be sick? No, I don't want to be sick. That's sick, man. That's a sick car you got there, RH. That's a sick truck, man. What? Oh, is my truck going to get sick or something like that? I hope I'm not in a truck when it gets sick on me. You know, you know. So I just, you know, I got to make light of some of this stuff because nobody wants to be preached at or lectured to. I'm just preaching with the choir, right? Preaching with the choir. That's what I call it. So 222, what was that? That was another major sign. And at the time, you know, make sure I made my path straight, got back on the right path again, because I was going down the wrong path. So 222 was the next one I kept seeing. You know what I mean? So basically, in my King James Version Bible, let me go to page 222 of my Bible, you know, that I critically learned. You know, I wish I can rebind this Bible because I don't want to give it, you know, give it away or whatever. So 222. Okay, actually on page 222, it talks about, you know, page 221 is the very first part. The rest of the sentence is actually, it starts on 221, the 10 Commandments, right? On page 221 in my King James Authorized Version, Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 6, that sentence completes on page 222, and it goes in and talks about the 10 Commandments, okay? So for me, at that time, I was given, in my opinion, I was given a sign to basically study and critically learn the 10 Commandments. And that's exactly what I did for myself, right? To get myself back on the right path. I mean, if you're not on the right path, how in the world could you ever try to teach somebody else or whatever? And I make mistakes sometimes. Y'all hear me get upset. I'm talking, especially when I'm talking about these murderers and going through and basically reading. I calm myself down by reading the Word of God, you know, and especially going to like Numbers to chapter 35, verse 30. So I used to have all of these memorized, you know, and sometimes when I wanted to go to a certain verse in the Bible, I just open up the Bible and it'll actually be on that right page, on the exact page I need it. Okay, Numbers chapter 35, verse 30. Whoso killeth any person, not just kill, right? Whoso killeth any person, the murderer. We're specifying here. The word of God is specifying. We're not talking about an accident, right? We're talking especially like premeditated, right? Whoso killeth any person. You get up on top of the American Glass Research Building, and you got a rifle, right, with a scope. In Butler, that was premeditated. It wasn't spur of the moment. You got in a fight and you lost control of yourself, and your anger got the best of you and hurt somebody that you didn't want to hurt. We're not talking about an accident like you're chopping wood and the axe head falls off, whatever, and hits somebody. And we're not talking about accidents here. Whoso killeth any person, the murderer shall be put to death by the mouth of witnesses. That has to be 2 witnesses at least, right? Because not like they did to Trump with their malicious prosecutions. Oh, this person said, or that person said. She heard that person. She wasn't even there. She heard her talking about it on the phone. Eric Ciaramella heard the telephone call of Brennan. You know, whatever the phone call was Zelensky, the perfect phone call. You know what I mean? Whosoever killeth any person, a murderer shall be put to death by the mouth of witnesses. But one witness shall not testify against any person to cause him to die, because it's that one person's word against the other, right? Moreover, ye shall take no satisfaction for the life of a murderer which is guilty of death, but he shall be surely put to death. And ye shall take no satisfaction for him that is fled to the city of his refuge, that he should come again to dwell in the land until the death of the priest. Okay, we're not going to get into verse 32, but again, this is Numbers chapter 35, verse 30. Numbers chapter 35, verse 31. Now, those that facilitated and directed invasion, now that goes for murders. That's the word of God. Don't blame RH. I'm reading the word of God here. Okay, go back and make sure everything still looks like we're still live. It's good. And again, remember, I'm not lecturing anyone here. We're getting support for, what we're talking about. We're not false witnessing. We don't know. Hey, I could be wrong about everything. Well, I don't know about everything. What I just read in the scriptures, I'm not wrong about. That's why we've had the death penalty for those that murder people. They go out there and murder for a lot of times for just for money, right? Just for money. That's all, for the love of money, right? Okay. Get back to the live stream here. Yeah, rain. Okay, we'll just go to rain. Now, I was going to talk about how everything aligned up with Mount St. Helens, and if I was seeing these signs when I was a young man stationed at McCord Air Force Base when Mount St. Helens actually blew up. The day that it blew up, that was the birthday of my sibling, my sister. That was her birthday. And the name at the time, Helen, was my mom's first name. That's crazy, ain't it? Just coincidences, I'm sure. I'm just thinking back in, if I'd gone through and critically learned the scriptures, would I known then? Maybe they would have showed me that I would have seen the same signs, so we could evacuate it out the people around Mount St. Helens, and all those people may have survived, right? Um, just like that major earthquake in Chile. Let me see if it's, I'm going to go down to Wikipedia. Let's see, Easter Island. If you go in and talking about making images like idols, images, and bow down and worship them, I was thinking about those statues on Easter Island at the time. That's why I even got to that point, trying to put those pieces together. I don't know if they're going to change this or not, but let's see the Wikipedia version. Rapa Nui, Spanish Isla de Pascua, is an island and special territory of Chile in the southeastern Pacific Ocean at the southernmost point. Territory of Chile, remember? That's where I got Chile from. At the southern easternmost point of the Polynesia Triangle and Oceania. The island was renowned for its nearly 1,000 extant monumental statues called moai, M-O-A-I, which were created by the early Rapa Nui people. In 1995, UNESCO named Easter Island a World Heritage Site, with such of the island protected with Rapa Nui National Park. Okay. Experts differ on the island's Polynesian inhabitants first reached the island, while many in the research community cited evidence that they arrived around the year 800. A 2007 study provided compelling evidence suggesting arrival was closer to 1200. The inhabitants created a thriving and industrialist culture, as evidenced by the island's enormous stone moai and other artifacts. Land clearing for cultivation and the introduction of Polynesian rat led to gradual deforestation. By the time of European arrival in 1722, island's population was estimated to be 2,000 to 3,000. European diseases, Peruvian slave trading, expeditions in the 1860s, and immigration to other islands, such as Tahiti, further depleted the population. Listen to this now, reducing it to a low of 111 native inhabitants in 1877. I was thinking that was 1888, but I was really looking at things that were occurring in history back in the 1800s at that time. So there it goes right there. If I'd have just read down, I saw Chile, right? I saw Chile, then I put out the warnings and people just ignored them, right? But if I'd have been conducted my due diligence and continued reading on, because 111 was a major sign. You can't make this up. You can go to Easter Island, the Wikipedia link, and read this for yourself. You can witness it for yourself. I didn't just make all this stuff up, right? I didn't even know Easter Island was a territory of Chile at that time until I read this Wikipedia article. That's in the first paragraph, right? So after that, I started bringing up Google Earth and all that stuff and trying to put markers. But anyways, I'm sure probably other things would have came up, but I should have went to other places to try to put the warning out so those people could be prepared for a possible earthquake. And that's what I was looking at. You know, a lot of times when earthquakes hit, they basically destroy these huge statues or monuments, that were built, hundreds of years ago, whatever. Anyways, okay. I'm sure there was more signs that I saw at the time, but okay, so let me get off of this here, go back. So it's all quiet over on Rumble territory. Yeah, Steve. Yeah, you've seen these signs too, so it's good. Okay, you've already left. Okay. Yeah, he's already left. Thanks for sticking around. It's already going on like 1 o'clock in the morning, right? 12:34 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Or yeah, 12:35 a.m. 00:0035. So that was the signs I saw for Mount St. Helens, or I should have picked up, but I wasn't, I didn't critically learn the scriptures at that time. I wish I had. I wish I had. So a lot of people got a head start on me as far as critically learning our scriptures, from the book by book, chapter by chapter, verse by verse, right? So anyways, let's go back to YouTube and see what's going on there. Okay. Again, for the fact checkers out there, I'm talking about Mount St. Helens, and I got the avatar photograph. That's Mount Rainier. Okay, we're talking about the signs, if you will, of or word association with rain, because Rainier is spelled Rainer, Mount Rainier, right? I got to fact check me on all these stuff because they'll say, well, RH, he don't even know how to spell, getting kind of where I got to get going here pretty soon. Really hope this helps. Rain ear, Rainier. Okay, to help out myself, make sure I don't misspell that again. So I do pretty good with spelling most of the time. Sometimes, what I mean, I think it's a memory deal. Definitely keep the faith, right? Keep the faith. you might, some people might see this little symbol I put out there sometimes when I'm in the chat on other channels. You'll see this symbol come up in front of area 111. It's kind of like my call sign, if you will. American flag, music for America, right? Another American flag. So if you see that in the comments section in YouTube, and I think that you'll be able to see that over on Rumble as well now. It's kind of like a call sign, those symbols, if you will. Yeah, you can't see the music symbol between the two flags on Rumble, at least on my screen. I could zoom in and see it a little bit better, but it's kind of blurry. All right. So I'm trying to recall if there's something else I was drawn to talk to tonight again. Okay. Trying to like American music for America. That's the U.S. flag, music, symbol, and another U.S. flag. So we're talking about rain, right? Rainier, Rainier. The signs I saw with our Rainier. Now I'm not trying to speak evil into existence. I'm just trying to try to save lives if we can. You know what I mean? We can as a community, but we have to. I think the people that study the you know volcanologist or whatever, those kind of things, and earthquakes, those kind of things that study them, and to keep a close eye on Mount Rainier and I believe Mount St. Helens as well. Now, remember, as far as basically the tragedy, what happened in Texas with that flood, right? Because of all the rain. Oh, that's right. You're in Washington State, right, Tracy? Yeah, I went tubing there one time when I was at McCord. I went tubing there just one time. Yeah, that's a beautiful mountain, ain't it? It's actually inactive volcano. Is it been active here lately? Has Mount Rainier gone active? I don't know. Yeah, remember we were stationed when I was living on base, and I lived in McCord. I was living in the barracks on base. How far are you from Yakima? No, I can't remember. How far is Rainier from Mount St. Helens? Quiet as a mouse. Well, that's good. I hope that thing doesn't act up and, what about Mount St. Helens? And then what I'll do, I'll say a prayer and, to myself, that no evil becomes of people that live near either Mount Rainier or Mount St. Helens. So That's what I do. You know what I mean? So let's see. I think I pretty much covered everything. Wow, that's cool. So you know what that road is called? That you see there in the picture on the left side of the avatar photograph, where you have that. Do you know which road that could be? You know, I could go to Google Earth, but I don't have my laptop anymore. It's obsolete. It's like ancient. You know, but basically all that old laptop's good for is a paperweight. There's a company we're talking about Seed of the Serpent, Highway 410. Okay, cool. Man, isn't it great how it all lines up here, right now? And, you know, I've actually been stationed there. You know exactly where I'm talking about. Uh, remember, did you come in when I was talking about me tracking? Actually, I was on scope when Mount St. Helens blew up on May 18th, 1980. Yeah, well, I can select the weather filters, or I can deselect the weather filter. When I deselect the weather filter on my scope, I can see the the dust cloud, the ash, whatever. And like at the last minute, the wind changed direction. It really dumped heavily on Yakima, not as much on McCord Air Force Base, but they had already bugged out the F-104s and all that stuff. We remained at work, and even after the ash kind of like floated down and like went to the ground. I remember driving in my car, and I'd have to turn my. I had a Chevrolet Impala at the time, and I remember having to turn on my windshield wipers with my washer on to get the ash off. And I remember going up to these small trees and actually side kicking the tree, and ash would fall down like snow. You know what I mean? Mount Adams. Yeah. Were you there when Mount St. Helens blew up, Tracy? 1980. Thanks that what you're saying, you know, I understand. Takes a while to type in all this stuff. Okay, well, so let's get back to this division again about people really angry in the Navy, but my grandpa lived directly south of Mount Adams. Oh, okay. So that's how you heard about it. Yeah, so I want to touch on the negativity and kind of like these people that are really, really angry. Believe me, I was kind of upset a little bit too. But, you know, with the basically the saying there's nothing there, right? far as the files. And remember, again, we can't get like contact lists or telephone numbers of like your Rolodex or whatever you had back then, where you had these cards and you had your contacts on them. You know what I mean? You could have a phone book, right? Or, black book or whatever you call it with people's phone numbers in it. But that doesn't make those people on those lists guilty of any crimes. You know what I mean? What was his name? The Attorney General of the state of Florida. What was his name? Acosta is his name. I can't remember his name, but he basically said we're told not to talk about it because of intel. So they got a hold of it, and they still got those hangovers. Anybody that was basically involved in that, in a wrong way, a very wrong way, right? They did everything they could to make sure that information was destroyed, right? Remember, like a burn barrel party. So don't automatically assume these people are lying. Don't automatically assume President Trump was lying, right? Or because President Trump goes, he kind of like said, you're bringing this up now with that, the biggest, like, what do you call it, natural disaster in Texas in that area in 100 years, where all these people have been found dead, these young girls and everybody, kids, and they still got I think it's over 100 people that are missing, right? Something like 160 people. Yeah, we should focusing on that to help those people out. Now, remember, they're using this to blame President Trump. That's part of the coup. That's the ongoing coup operation to overthrow the president. See, they wanted all that. Those, I call them money laundering operations. I could be wrong. The D party, right? They wanted that to continue, so they fought against basically the greatest tax, what do you call it, reduction in the history of our country. And they voted by saying no to the largest tax increase in the history of our country. I think it's one of the largest tax increases in the history of our country. That's punishing American people, right? And they're targeting American people. They don't, just because we support President Trump. So again, let's use the analogy of we're actually, if we're in a battle, right? Say it's with the Delta Sierra, right? Delta Sierra, the capital letter D and the capital letter S. They are at war with us. They take their shots, right? This is an analogy. We're not talking about killing anybody here, right? Well, some of them are, but the seashell formations and all that stuff, and what they've been saying out loud, using different symbols and stuff like that. So no, stop the evil, right? So in this battle, they take a couple shots. The good guys, we take a couple of shots, or put out a few subpoenas, whatever, put people under oath. The right side of right does that, And there's this battle going on. We lose one part of the battle, and then we have everybody tuck their tail and run and start attacking each other. That's exactly the playbook of that guy with the red leotards, the pitchfork, and the horns, right? The same old tried and perfected divide and conquer, time and time and time again. I saw people actually breaking up and nearly crying because that wasn't. Yeah, I understand the children. That's the reason why I talk about that's a true life story of my own. I was told that the daughter of John Voight was trafficking children. And then I said, okay, a person that I thought was my friend. I go, okay, so I said, do you have proof of that or anything? Because that's John Voight's daughter. And she said it herself. And just because I said, okay, do you have that video of her saying she was actually child trafficking herself? I'd like to see it. I want to see it. And the person started personally attacking me. All you worried about is those sport cars. And you're asking me if I'm single. I was a single man. I just inquired, are you married or not? So I would be appropriate when I talk to the lady. And then she blocked me, right? And she moved on, right? Like they call Rush Limbaugh used to call them the drive-bys. You know what I mean? So trust but verify, right? Trust but verify. We have to be on the same spiritual team. John chapter 17. Okay, so with that said, let's reevaluate ourselves, Let's reevaluate our emotions and think it over. I know what Pam Bondi said. Okay. I know she said she had the list on her desk. She's only one person. She's leading the Department of Justice. You delegate things down to lower levels. Like, remember all that information at in New York? They blocked the president from getting, right? We removed that one obstacle and that's part of the battle, right? The person obstructing that order to be fulfilled. We want that information. They blocked and stonewalled to give them time to do what? To destroy all the evidence on themselves. And give them the time to basically try to set up people like Donald Trump, like they did in Mar-a-Lago. Okay, so we got to stick together. And we have to stick together. Yeah, even so, we may lose this battle. Remember, God never loses. We don't see that big picture, right? Some people say that God loses battles, but he's going to win the war. Okay, you have a right to your opinion. I don't believe God loses any battles. He darn sure isn't going to lose a war if it's a spiritual war, because it's prophesied in our Word of God. Okay? Remember, we could even have more power than the Son of God. Remember what Matthew chapter 5, verse 9 says. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the sons of God or the children of God, right? Yeshua, or Christ, he's the Son of God. Blessed are the peacemakers. Remember, it was Peter that cut off the ear of that military guy, right? That was trying to take Yeshua in custody. What did Yeshua say? Now, I'm not saying you allow somebody to cut your ear off. No, I'm not saying that. Who committed the greater sin? Was it Pontius Pilate? What happened to Judas Iscariot? Okay. I'll tell you what happened to Judas Iscariot spiritually. Remember, stay on the right team. Um, okay, let's go to, remember, read John chapter 17 for us to understand which spiritual team we should be on. Team Spirit, right? Okay, we're going to go to the Bible Hub, John chapter 13, verse 27. John chapter 13. Okay, so for context, I'm going to go back to the previous verse, John chapter 13, verse 26. Yeshua answered, He it is to whom I shall give a sop, when I have dipped it. And when he had dipped the sop, he gave it to Judas Iscariot, the son of Simon. Okay? So then, John chapter 13, verse 27 reads in the King James Version Bible, authorized King James, and after the sop, Satan entered into him. Then said Jesus unto him, or Yeshua, that thou doest, do quickly. What thou doest, do quickly. Okay? Okay, there's something else here. Okay, so with that said, remember, in God we trust, everyone else trust but verify. Or remember to stay on the same team. And good morning, good day, good evening, wherever you're from. This concludes the live stream, and God bless. Thank you.